What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Nelson Fragrance. My name is Ryan. Thank you for joining me today. Bear with me here a little bit today. I'm just getting over being sick, so I'm going to sound pretty congested, and I apologize for that. But today we're going to be talking about my picks for the cooler weather in indie and natural perfumery. Now, this list is in no particular order with the exception of the very last one, and we'll get to it when we get there. And kind of like as a rule, I'm going to be limiting this list to one fragrance per house. So first off, we're going to talk about Dsir and their perfume Sola. Now, this wouldn't really strike most people as a cooler weather fragrance, being that it has a top of lavender and citrus and florals. But this also rests on a bed of frankincense and myrrh. So you just get this incredibly, it's probably one of my favorite representations of lavender in any perfume. This is just an incredible lavender, and it comes out with some yuzu and florals as well. I believe there's rose in here. And then as it dries down, it warms up more and more as that frankincense and myrrh takes over. So it's got like a warm sweetness that builds up along with that lavender through the life of the fragrance. And in typical Dsir fashion, these are Japanese style perfumery tends to sit closer to the skin. So this isn't really a beast mode fragrance. These are more personal fragrances. You wear these for yourself around the house, just relaxing and just taking in the fragrance on your own. So that is Dsir Sola. Next up, we have ShenZhou from Elixir Attar. Now this is an incredibly complex perfume. It's got a lot going on in here, and I had a pretty difficult time wrapping my head around it when I first tried it because I was just always getting something new out of it. Like wearing experience going from time to time with this is just incredibly diverse and complex. So generally this opens up with some citrus and florals, and it's got tonka and vanilla in this as well. So it reads kind of gourmand, but it's fresh and heavy at the same time, making this suitable for kind of all year wear. But I definitely love wearing this when it's a little cooler out, because as it dries down, the vanilla and the tonka smooth things out, warm things up a little bit. And then it's got oud and musk in here as well. So it just makes for a very intriguing wearing experience overall, because you're always getting something new. That is Elixir Attar's ShenZhou. Next up, I'm going to be talking about Jinko store, and I had a bit of a difficult time picking between this and Indian Papyrus for my fall choices, but I ended up going with this because this is one of my favorite, sorry about the lighting here, this is Jinko store's Sunset in Cairo, which is predominantly a Blue Lotus incense fragrance. But the incense in this is just absolutely incredible. And that's basically like a lot of what I get out of this fragrance is just that crazy, huge, bold incense. And the Blue Lotus is there. It's not overly prominent because I'm not really the biggest fan of Blue Lotus dominant perfumes, but it's there, it's present, and it's just kind of smoothing everything out. But at least on my skin, this is predominantly more of an incense fragrance, and it's definitely one of my favorites. This also is incredibly potent, like 1-2 sprays max. Everybody around you is going to smell it, and it's a really good cold weather wear with that incense. That is Jinko Store's Sunset in Cairo. Next up, I have a release from Ansar Oud. This is one that's seen several releases over the years. This is the second iteration of Iris Ghalia, or as people generally call it, Iris Ghalia V2. So this is a more musky version of the fragrance. He dropped some animalics that were present in the first and third. So after the first, dropped some animalics, but increased the musk in this. And this is probably my favorite version of all of the above. Now, spraying this on, this fragrance smells purple. It has a very purple hue to it. And we actually... Abu Naim in the fragrance groups, he actually had a semi-bespoke of this called Purple Rain, which takes Iris Ghalia, adds purple quinam and some other notes to it, which basically just go to highlight how purple this fragrance is. But this is really, really big, bold musk and iris and woods and oud. There's rose in here. There's a whole lot. Now, this wears very sweet, and the iris is a very, I wouldn't say it's an indelic iris. It's more of like it blends really well with the musk. It's almost like an animalic iris, but I absolutely love this one. This is actually one of my all-time favorite perfumes. I wore it on my son's day of birth. And this is one that I'm always going to have in some form or another because it's one of my favorite compositions of all time. Next up, we're going to be talking about FolkWinds American Pharaoh. So this is probably the best one that he's released of his release trio for colder weather. This is it's smoky, it's tobacco. This is another fragrance that has a lot going on, a lot of different nuances, and you get different things over the course of the wearing experience. This has a lot of large transitions, and right in the opening, you get a really big, bold cherry note that sits right on top of tobacco. So it's like cherry tobacco, but it's like cherry-dominated tobacco. And then through the life of the fragrance, you get this really, really nice cedar note that comes out, along with a whole lot of other things. But it's smoky, it's woody, it's tobacco, and I am really not a fan of tobacco and fragrance. I don't have many tobacco fragrances in my collection, but with everything else going on in here, and this is, I find to be a tobacco fragrance that I can really wear and enjoy. I really enjoy it. It makes for a very interesting wearing experience because with those big transitions, what you spray on and then what you smell in a half an hour and then an hour after that, it's constantly changing. So you're constantly going back to it and just enjoying the life this fragrance takes. So that is FolkWinds American Pharaoh. Next up, we have the first release from Lost Tribe Perfumes. Now this is called I Hope You Like It. And this is a very interesting fragrance as well because it smells very complex and very simple at the same time. Now, it's got this waxy candy-like opening that comes from a combination of the citrus and the florals and a couple other things going on here. But this wears very sweet, and then it dries down very woody. There's a sandalwood in here that comes out in the mid and kind of takes over the life of the fragrance, and it's an exceptional sandalwood. Definitely, this is one of 2 releases from Lost Tribe so far, and both have been incredible releases. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what comes from Lost Tribe moving forward. Next up, we have probably the only Rose Oud, surprisingly, because it's my favorite style composition overall. But we have Rosa Rue from Jinx Smells or Jinx Perfumery. Now this is a more rose-forward Rose Oud, which trying to strike the balance between rose and oud in Rose Ouds is something that it's kind of hard to get a good 50-50 split on these notes because the rose tends not to hang out for very long before the oud takes over, and they generally dry down to just oud that lasts through the end of the fragrance. But this is pretty well balanced. While it is more rose forward, I would say it's more like a 60-40 split. And this is definitely one of my favorite Rose Ouds to come out over the past couple of years. It's very unique. It has like a freshness to it, a fruitiness to it to just build on that Rose Oud blend. And it's definitely been one of my favorites since this came out. Actually, I enjoy it so much. When I very first smelled it, when I got a sample, like before the release was set, one of the Patreon exclusives for Jinx Smells was he actually offered some 15 ml sizes for this. So I actually have both a 15 ml of this and a 30 ml. So this is probably one of my more favorite releases of the past year. So that's Rosa Rue from Jinx Smells. And last but not least, probably my overall favorite for cooler weather wear, and this probably isn't going to come as any surprise to a lot of you who followed me for a long period of time. This is Tsvga Parfums, and if you haven't guessed it already, it's going to be Myrrhder. Now, I have 4 different bottles of this because it is probably If I had to pick one overall fragrance that's mine to be favorite of all time, this would definitely be a contender for it. I probably worn this more than any other fragrance in my collection, and it has several different batches and variances. For the Tsvga, I believe it was the 1-year anniversary. He came out with a Myrrhder EDT and an EDP anniversary edition, which I believe this is the EDP, which is basically Myrrhder with a lemon twist. But as the name implies, with a fragrance like Myrrhder, this fragrance is all about the resin myrrh. And it wasn't one I was too familiar with before this release, and I've become very well acquainted with myrrh since. But myrrh tends to be like a very sweet, syrupy, resinous kind of smell, which basically is what's highlighted in this perfume. So it's boozy, it's smoky, it's got like a charred wood aspect to it. There's oud in this, along with that myrrh. It's sticky sweet. And when I first smelled this fragrance, it really took me back to my childhood. I've lived in restaurants pretty much my whole life. My dad is a career chef. I have been a career chef as well. And this reminds me of my father taking me into the restaurant. And one of the things that they did is they pan-toasted sugar to use in some of the desserts that they made there. And that was one of the things that I first smelled when I very first smelled this fragrance, was it just took me back to that memory of pan-toasting sugar and the aroma that it fills a room with. And so other people have gotten, they say it smells like pancakes, it's like boozy sugar, boozy syrup. But I get more of a toasted sugar vibe with this. And it's a very, very smooth, sweet, like the smoke is more of like, it gives you warmth with this fragrance instead of like screechy smoke. It's just lending some warmth to the fragrance. And it's one of my favorites of all time. And I just absolutely love wearing it when it's cold out. Not that you can't wear it in warmer weather. You can just really abuse it when it's colder out so it doesn't just cloy you. So those are my picks for fall and winter. I might do a separate winter video just to showcase some more cool weather fragrances. But thank you for joining me, everybody. If you have, tell me what your favorite cold weather compositions are in the comments. Let's have a discussion about it. But thank you, everybody, for joining me. This is Ryan with Nelson Fragrance. Peace and love, everyone. Thank you.